because morning life starts now. And the police were forced to deploy tear gas to disperse a group of youth who blocked President William Ruto's motorcade during his tour of Dagoretti South and Dagoretti North constituencies in Nairobi. That was yesterday. But the demonstration temporarily disrupted the president's itinerary as he sought to engage constituents and promote his collaboration with the Orange Democratic Movement, that is ODM. Now, speaking during the visit, President William Ruto criticized the opposition for what he described as divisive politics rooted in hatred and tribalism, constructing it with his message of cooperation and unity. Take a look.
Hao watu wanashindana na mtu. Kenya sio maneno ya watu. And I am telling them, simple minds like you guys discuss individuals like William Ruto. Serious minds like us discuss ideas and agendas and a program to transform the nation. That is the difference. Kuna tofauti mkubwa sana kati ya wale jamaa na sisi. Wale jamaa mpango hawana, maono hawana, sera hawana, mpango hawana, agenda hata akili. Sasa hiyo maneno tuko pamoja. Niwaulize, kama wangekuwa na akili, si wangekuwa wametueleza ni nini wanataka kufanyia Kenya? Sasa kazi yao ni kusema sisi. Sisi wa kabila hii, sisi wa kabila hii, sisi wa kabila hii. Sisi tunawaambia mnatuchosha na ukabila, sisi ni wa Kenya bana. Ama namna gani? Wacheni hizo zenu. Mtuambie sera ama namna gani? Na hawa jamaa unajua wamekubali. We must give it to them. Wamekubali hawana sera.
Alright, moving on. A morning for the late Emurua Dikirr Member of Parliament, Johana Ngeno, at his home turned chaotic as two groups clashed during the morning proceedings. But the confrontation escalated when tensions between the factions boiled over, forcing police officers to fire warning shots into the air to regain control of the situation. Now, when a local activist was confronted by youths amid the scuffle, highlighting the volatile atmosphere that marred what was intended to be a solemn occasion.
Ningependa kuwaonya viongozi ambao wanatembea na kutumia vijana kwa njia isiyofaa ya kwamba kifo ya Ngeno sio kifo ya kutumia kuileta siasa ya kikapila.
Leo umetutumanishia vijana tu disrupt sijui mashishi. Mashishi itaendelea, Kenya itaendelea, na ujinga itakoma.
Nyinyi mtuachie shida yetu tubebe na ndugu yetu tumweke tumlaze mahala pema peponi kwa amani na mapenzi kama jamii kama serikali. Hiyo mambo ingine ya siasa usitumie kifo cha ndugu yetu Johana kupiga siasa. Hasa zile siasa zenyu za ujinga, hiyo hatuwezi tukakubali.
Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, has expressed deep condolences following the passing of Johana Ngeno, describing him as one of the most talented and exemplary MPs to have served in the National Assembly. Speaking on the loss, Speaker Wetangula highlighted Ngeno's exceptional skills in debate and his leadership, noting that he consistently set a standard for fellow lawmakers. Now, he said that Honorable Ngeno stood for his mastery in parliamentary proceedings and his leadership was exemplary. Wetangula said that Ngeno's death has been widely mourned across political circles, with many recognizing his contributions to legislative processes and his unwavering commitment to his constituents in Emurua Dikirr. Take a look.
As a parliament, we have lost one of our finest in conduct, finest in debate, finest in leadership, a member who was doing his third term, who was privileged to be the chair of the Committee on Housing, overseeing the very critical government program of affordable housing, development of public markets, development of hostels in schools, and formulating and improving and reviewing and evaluating the housing policies of this country to translate them into regulations and law. Johana was a very gifted member of parliament, never speaking out of turn, never offending the standing orders of the House, and constantly consulting where he needed to consult to make rational decisions. As a House of Parliament, as a country, and his constituents, and above all his family, we have lost heavily.
Now, 6 officers attached to the Kenya Wildlife Service have a case to answer in the alleged abduction of fisherman Brian Odhiambo, and Nakuru Court has ruled. Chief Magistrate Kip Kirui Kibelion delivered the decision, stating that the court had carefully considered the evidence presented by the prosecution and found it sufficient to place the accused on the defense. Now, the 6 suspects, Francis Wachira, Alexander Lorogoi, Isaac Ochieng, Michael Wabukala, Evans Kimayo, and Abdurrahman Ali Sudi, were charged in May last year over the alleged abduction, which reportedly occurred in January. Following the ruling, Odhiambo's family expressed confidence that justice will be served as the case progresses. Now, the matter is scheduled for hearing on June 8th, when the accused persons will be given an opportunity to present their defense before the court.
It is my finding that a prima facie case has been established against all the 6 accused persons, sufficiently to require each accused to make a defense. Each accused therefore is placed on defense.
Tuko na furaha kwa sababu hawa askari wameambiwa kwamba wako na kesi ya kujibu, na kama wataweza kujitetea tarehe 8 mwezi wa 6 mwaka wa 2029, vile nimesema, kuna uwezekano kwamba huenda wakafungwa.
Na kwa leo nimetoka kama roho iko na furaha kidogo, juu najua nitapata justice ya mtoto wangu. Najua Mungu atatenda.
Right, moving on, President William Ruto has announced that the government will begin construction of an international airport in June this year, in a move aimed at boosting Kenya's economic growth and strengthening its global connectivity. Speaking while inspecting development projects in Dagoretti South and Dagoretti North constituencies in Nairobi, President William Ruto said that the multi-billion shillings project is designed to position Kenya as a regional aviation hub and accelerate the country's journey towards international development standards. The head of state noted that the new airport will create thousands of jobs, enhance the aviation sector, and attract foreign investment from across the globe.
Hawa majamaa wanajaribu kushindana na mimi. Hawajui vile mashule inajengwa. Hawajui vile barabara inajengwa. Hawajui vile affordable housing inajengwa. Hawajui vile soko inajengwa. Hawa jamaa hawana agenda. Hawa jamaa hawana sera. Hawa jamaa hawana mpango. Hawa jamaa hawana maono. Ni kweli ama si kweli?
Serikali ya Nairobi na serikali kuu ishirikiane ama isishirikiane. Mimi niko na bilioni 40. Rais ameniongezea ingine 80. Si ningekuwa mjinga nikikataa pesa zaidi? Wangapi mnakubalia tushirikiane na rais wetu?
All right, at the same time, Deputy President Kithure Kindiki has continued his coastal development tour with a visit to Taita Taveta County, where he inspected ongoing government infrastructure projects and urged residents to support the administration's development agenda. Speaking in Bura after assessing projects including road construction and market development, the Deputy President called on locals to give the government time to implement its programs for the benefit of grassroots communities. Kindiki emphasized that the projects are aimed at improving connectivity, boosting trade, and enhancing livelihoods across the country or the county. Now, he also directed contractors handling the road construction projects to ensure residents begin enjoying improved transport networks without unnecessary delays.
Iko watu wanataka kuanaanza kukuletea fitina, eti wanasema sijui nini. Sisi watu wa Taita Taveta, tukiwa viongozi wote, we want to tell them, you will not get political popularity kwa kuanza kuongea mambo ya deputy president, kwa sababu hii kiti ya naibu wa rais ilienda asubuhi na mapema.
Sisi kama wajumbe hatujuti kumchagua yeye, kumweka yeye kumsaidia naibu wa rais, kumsaidia rais wetu. Yale maamuzi tuliyafanya, wengine wetu walichukia, lakini sasa yanazaa matunda.
Tumekuja hapa kuangalia baadhi ya miradi ya maendeleo ambayo inafanywa na serikali kuu katika jimbo letu la Taita Taveta. Kwa muda mrefu watu wengi wamekuwa na madharau. Unaona ya kwamba sehemu kama hii yetu ya Taita Taveta maendeleo ilikuwa inafika kidogo kidogo. Ni kweli si kweli? Ni kweli si kweli? Lakini safari hii tumesema ile mipango yote ya maendeleo inaendelea Kenya mzima, hata Taita Taveta lazima ipate.
Right now, let's talk matters politics. Members of Parliament from the Orange Democratic Movement, that is ODM, have resolved to support their party leaders' efforts to engage in dialogue with other political parties ahead and even after next year's general election. The lawmakers, including both MPs and senators within the party, stated that the talks are expected to begin with the ruling United Democratic Alliance, that is CDA, with the aim of crafting strategies that could position ODM within the next government. National Assembly Minority Leader Junet Mohammed confirmed that ODM legislators have endorsed a delegates meeting scheduled for the 27th of this month to deliberate further on the proposed political engagements.
The parliamentary group meeting also endorsed the decision of the NEC to give mandate to our party leader to start the process of negotiation with the party, with other parties, with like-minded parties, starting with the UDA party, under the way the Central Committee and the NEC Committee, the NEC Committee approved. Parliamentary group also endorsed the decision to have the National Delegates Conference on 27th of March, 27th of this month, and from Friday, the party will communicate and give the 21-day notice that is required in law. The parliamentary group also agreed to receive the report of the 10-point agenda on Tuesday at a broad-based parliamentary group meeting that will be held at KICC on Tuesday.
Right, moving on, a coast-based opposition faction has endorsed Kalonzo Musyoka as its preferred presidential candidate in the upcoming general election. The leaders speaking in Tononoka, that is Mombasa County, after a closed-door meeting declared their support for the Labour Party leader, saying he represents a viable alternative for coastal residents and the country at large. During the address, they criticized President William Ruto, accusing his administration of failing to fulfill key promises to the coast region. Among the concerns raised were unemployment, long-standing land disputes, and what they termed as inequitable distribution of national resources. The group further alleged that corruption has worsened service delivery, leaving many Kenyans without access to essential public services.
That the united opposition is united, that united opposition is strong, and it is unstoppable in the coastal region. Why the united oppositions? Because Kenyans are tired of the high cost of living, tired of high taxation, tired of unemployment, tired of broken promises, corruption, and a failed leadership.
Watu wakifungua biashara, tax ziko juu, KRA wako pale, wamama, vijana wote wanaanza kufunga biashara zao. Ina lead nini? Ina lead kwa ujambazi.
William Samoei Ruto ni one term. Sababu zetu za kwa nini tunasema ni one term. William Samoei Ruto ameua demokrasi ya vyama vya siasa. Na wale ndugu zetu, naomba pia wale ndugu zetu tulikuwa nao Azimio, akina Joe, waache tamaa, wakuje katika muungano wa one term. Tunataka tukizungumza tuwe tumesikiza sauti ya wananchi. Sauti ya nani? Ya wananchi. Hiyo ndio sauti ambayo tunataka tuisikie ikitoka huko pwani. Na wananchi hawaje kuwa consulted kuhusu jambo hili. Lakini ukizunguka utawasikia wananchi wanasema hawataki hiyo njia ambayo viongozi wanajaribu kuwapeleka.
Public health services in Mombasa County face potential disruption as doctors under the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Dentists and Pharmacists Union, that is KMPDU, have threatened to begin an official strike if the county government fails to address their long-standing demands. Speaking in Mombasa, the medical professionals complained of alleged maltreatment by their employer, noting that nearly 6 years after entering into return-to-work agreements, no significant measures have been implemented to honor the terms. The demands include improvement in working conditions, promotions, salary increases, and full implementation of previous agreements.
We are guided by professional ethos, and therefore everybody should stick to their lane. We are tired of political interference. We are tired of undignified work, and we are demanding, and it needs to be very clear, that we are demanding respect, dignity, and fair treatment as workers of this county.
And it's a problem that has been simmering
Once it started with 1 or 2 doctors, now we have upwards of 100 doctors who have not been promoted. Same caste, same script, different castes. Our members have made a resolve that kuanzia saa 6 usiku leo kila mtu atakuwa anashiriki mgomo mpaka ule wakati ambapo kitaeleweka.
The political interference that we saw from the MPs, from the MCAs, from everyone when you're dealing with political patients is just an expressive show that county has been on strike. So today we are going to join them. We will not only join them if the county government sit down and show us or give us or meet us all these demands that we expressed. Because it is 7 days, and for us it's either the things that we outlined in our strike notice are implemented, or doctors leave the hospitals for the county government and the politicians to handle forthwith.
All right, moving on, Dan Wanyama has urged parents in Obuya West constituency whose children, especially those in grade 10, remain at home due to lack of school fees to seek assistance from his office, reaffirming his commitment to prioritizing education in the area. Speaking during the official opening of 8 newly constructed classrooms funded by the National Government Constituencies Development Fund, that is NGCDF, at Obuya SA Primary School in Machulo Ward, Wanyama stated that no learner should stay out of school because of financial constraints. The legislator emphasized that his office has set aside support mechanisms to ensure needy students access education, urging affected families to come forward for help. At the same time, at the same event, Wanyama advised young people to use social media responsibly, cautioning that online conduct could negatively impact future employment opportunities. He also discouraged youth from getting inappropriate body tattoos, noting that such decisions could hinder prospects in disciplined services such as the police force.
Tunaelewana? Tafadhali, kama kuna mtoto alifanya grade 9 na hajaenda grade 10, please, ofisi iko pale, wacha tujue, alafu tuone vile tutasaidia huyo mtoto, tumpatie nafasi aweze pia kujitafutia maisha katika ujana wake. So wazazi, ama umesikia ama unaona mtoto wa jirani ambaye hajaenda shule mpaka wa sasa, tafadhali wasiliana na afisi yangu ili tuweze kuona vile tunaweza kusaidia huyo mtoto. Na kwa wale ambao wali apply for the bursary by tomorrow this week, checks zitakuwa tayari, listi itawekwa na checks zitaanza kupelekwa shule. Tumejaribu ile kuhesabio kuona kwamba at least hata wale wenye huwa hawapati, sasa tulienda kwa list tuone kama umewahi pata, leo tutakuacha kando, tupatie mwingine mwenye hajawahi pata.
Through what you have done, Mheshimiwa, last year we managed to take 82 students to C1 school. The previous school we used to call National School. Those who went to extra-county schools were 115. We know you are investing here, you are investing for posterity, you are investing for the future of this community.
Our classrooms were so congested. Your intervention through NGCDF to provide 8 classrooms is so timely and we honestly appreciate.
Hii jengo iko kwa shamba yenye nilinunua wakati yenye nilikuwa kansala. Hata sio wakati ya county assembly, wakati yenye nilikuwa kansala. Na ile jengo nyingine shamba, kuna shamba kule ploti 2 nyuma, nayo nikanunua kama nikikuwa MCA.
Now, in the economic front, in the heart of Westlands, a bold fashion transformation is underway, redefining how traditional African fabrics are worn and perceived. What was once largely reserved for cultural ceremonies and special occasions is now making a confident statement in the corporate offices, social events, and international fashion spaces. At the center of this shift is businesswoman Victoria Ijeoma Wogu, who is blending vibrant Ankara prints with silk contemporary silhouettes to craft craft a modern African identity through her innovative designs. Ankara fabric, known for its striking colors and patterns, is being reimagined into stylish workwear, elegant evening outfits, and globally appealing fashion pieces. And the approach not only celebrates African heritage but also positions it within mainstream and trademarked fashion conversation.
Kenya to be a very interesting environment for business. Business regulation here is actually very strong and in order. And so if you're doing business in Kenya and you stay within the regulations, you are likely to thrive. On the other hand, in terms of the creativity, I found that there's a hunger for African fashion in Kenya. A lot of people at the prime of their career, at the prime of their life, want to dress to show their African uniqueness. And there are very limited options for them to do this in a normal way without feeling too dressed up or feeling that, they've overdone it. So I came in to provide fashion that is foundationally African, but is essentially contemporary, to serve a curious and thirsty public who really want to dress African. I would say if you want to invest in Kenya, please go ahead. You're going to find the business environment to be very friendly. You're going to find that things have been put in place for businesses to run smoothly. There are regulations. Insofar as you keep in line with those regulations, nobody is going to bother you. You do your legitimate business in Kenya. And Kenya has a very strong middle class. So you have people who will be able to demand and pay for your products and services. Insofar as you're delivering value, you will find a good interest and good support from Kenyans. Well, my business has had an economic and social impact. In terms of the social impact, there is more demand for African wear. There is more demand for my designs. I see people wearing my designs to go about their daily life, which really was my intention, to make African wears more mainstream. But economically, my company has grown in 3 years to employ 15 people and have 3 key locations. So we are essentially contributing even to the lives and empowerment of our staff members. We also pay our taxes, which is contributing to the Kenyan economy. Our designs are environmentally friendly and they are sustainable. Turning 50 today, my main inspiration, in fashion has been also watching the lives of other people, who have gone ahead of me to set up businesses, to run them successfully, and to build them into an empire. I am celebrating 50 years of age and 3 years anniversary of Vikio Atelier Limited in Kenya.
Right, it is exactly 34 minutes past the top of the hour. That we're taking a short breather here on Morning Life, but we'll be back in just a bit. Alright, welcome back to the program. And just in case you're joining us, this is Morning Life. My name is Macharia. Now let's take a look on what's making headlines on the dailies today. And I'm having the Daily Nation newspaper this particular morning, and as well as the Standard newspaper dated the 4th day of March 2026. Now let's kick it off with the Daily Nation. And the Daily Nation top story says, storm over Linda Mwananchi Party. That's the headline on this particular newspaper. And of course, there is a picture there of the two factions, the faction, the Linda Ground faction and the Linda Mwananchi faction, which of course is led by the likes of Edwin Sifuna and Babu Owino, and the Linda Ground faction led by their party leader and as well as Gladys Wanga. All right. Now, the Linda Mwananchi, the Linda Ground actually says they should declare their intentions since their rallies have abandoned ODM colors. They should come out clear on their real intentions in light of this application to form a new political party. And as well as the Linda Mwananchi says this move, or this movement is bigger than a name. They've taken the letter to the law, but the spirit of the law is still with the people. The movement is not in the name. Those are the words of the Linda Mwananchi faction. And a plot of transformation, to transform Linda Mwananchi, a campaign slogan coined by perceived ODM rebels into a party, has sparked a bitter row between the Orange Democratic movement faction on the real sponsors of the initiative. Now, is it the rebels' fallback plan, a hostile takeover by rivals, or a business venture for political brokers? And of course, that's a question that we're going to take a look at this particular morning with my panelists right here in this particular program. Of course, you're asking, is ODM losing ground? All right. Stick around for that particular conversation. Let's take a look at that particular story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. Now, the Daily Nation continues to say that just as the Mwananchi movement, spearheaded by perceived ODM rebels, is stirring up the country's political scene, a new development has emerged in form of an application to register the movement as a political party. The unexpected move has been met with suspicion by all parties, including the movement's own supporters. Three theories have emerged that it could be a fallback plan by the perceived ODM rebels, an attempt at hostile takeover of the popular name, or a calculated business gamble by political entrepreneurs. Now, the application, which was submitted last week to the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, that is ORPP, appears to have taken the movement associated with the embattled ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna and his allies by surprise. Now under review at the ORPP, the application to reserve the party's name has triggered suspicion and quiet calculations across rival camps, raising three pressing questions. Is it a fallback plan by Mr. Sifuna's camp? Is it a scheme by the ODM rivals, or by functions within the wider ODM opposition, or the broad-based government to lock them out of the name? Or could it be a commercial maneuver, Mugambi Imanyara movement, where an individual moves swiftly to secure political brand before its perceived owners do? Right. At the center of the controversial is Charles Wanyonyi, who has confirmed that he applied to reserve the name. And of course, just in case you're wondering, these particular functions the warring factions actually emerged when the late party leader, that is Raila Amolo Odinga, actually died. We actually saw that some faction, which are calling themselves the Linda Ground faction, actually said that Baba left us in the broad-based government, and the broad-based government comprises of the 10-point agenda signed between Raila Amolo Odinga and, of course, the head of state, that is President William Ruto of the UDA government. All right. Now, the Linda Ground actually says that they will support the government come 2027. Of course, in some instances, they say that they want the DP position, and in some instances, they say that they will know what to do come 2027. All right. Just the other day, actually yesterday, they were actually saying that they are open to coalition talks with any political party, starting with the president's affiliated party, that is UDA, right, and as well as the Mwananchi, the Linda Mwananchi faction led by Edwin Sifuna and Babu says that they will protect the party's ideologies. Right, of course, you will remember for the better part of when ODM has actually been in the opposition, they have actually the ideologies have been centered on the Mwananchi's problems. Now the Linda Mwananchi faction actually says that they will protect that ideology which ODM has been standing for. All right, that's the story on page 4 and 5 exclusively on the Daily Nation. You want to look at it on that particular pages. All right, moving on. NSSF sold fake land to teachers SACCO, why workers will lose twice. That's on matters fraud. And the fraudulent land deal will see workers who have saved money with the National Social Security Fund, that is NSSF, lose millions of shillings. NSSF bought the land illegally and sold it to the SACCO. A court has revoked the deal and ordered NSSF to refund cash. That's as well on page 8 of the Daily Nation this particular morning, as well as lobby. 8 learners have died in schools this term. Now, 8 is actually the number of reported deaths in schools across the country, according to a lobby. Now, the Elemo Borough Working Group has raised the alarm over safety of students in schools, noting that at least 8 learners have died since institutions reopened in January, that is this year. That's actually on page 10 of the Daily Nation. Of course, I would remember that we actually covered a story right here on EBN television, where a student, a former student, actually, fell ill, and of course, the management of the school actually failed to attend to her, which resulted to her death. Well, it's quite unfortunate when these things actually happen in these institutions where the parents have entrusted the schools with their children for at least 3 months. Right now, the Limo Bora Working Group has raised the alarm over safety of learners in schools, saying that at least 8 learners have died this term under preventable circumstances. This comes a week after parents stormed Moi Comprehensive School in Nakuru City, carrying the body of a learner into the school compound. The child had already collapsed at school and taken to hospital, but was pronounced dead on arrival. Now, the parents accused the institution of negligence, demanding accountability from both school authorities and the Ministry of Education. Now, the Civil Society Network expressed outrage over the loss of life, citing failures in safety, supervision, emergency preparedness, and institutional accountability. It further accused the government of failing to enforce safety standards in schools, saying that this has led to systematic negligence and weak emergency response mechanisms. Now, Moses Joseph Onyoni was the grade 9 learner at Moi Comprehensive School who collapsed in class and was pronounced dead on arrival at Nakuru Teaching and Referral Hospital. A post-mortem report ruled out foul play, although it was inclusive about the cause of death. In Machakos County, Samuel Munyao, a grade 10 student, died after being run over by a faulty school water truck within the school compound. Brenda King from Njoro Girls High School only had her families contacted after her health had significantly worsened. Right? It's quite unfortunate. Of course, as well as Consolata Ndoku and the others. Of course, may their souls rest in peace. And of course, we hope, that justice will be served to bring closure to the bereaved families. All right, moving on to matters of healthcare. Union demands SHA overhaul as teachers detained, quote-unquote, detained over bills. Now, our teachers union has put the Teachers Service Commission, that is TSC, and the Social Health Authority, that is SHA, on notice, demanding urgent reforms in the management of tutors' medical cover, alleging that members are being detained in hospitals of unpaid bills. Now, the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, that is KUPPET, also called for full autonomy of junior schools, warning that the current administrative arrangement undermines the smooth implementation of the competency-based education. The resolution were reached after a day-long meeting bringing together officials elected from junior schools and members of KUPPET's National Executive Board in Nairobi yesterday. KUPPET Secretary General, that is Akilo Misori, said that the transition from AON Net to the Public Officers Medical Scheme Fund administered by SHA has left teachers exposed. Of course, we've actually seen, teachers decrying about, this scheme of health. The teachers were actually under Minet's medical cover. But when President William Ruto came in with SHA, that is the Social Health Authority, he actually said that, the teachers should actually transition from Minet to SHA. Now, the teachers actually, decrying this particular scheme, saying the teachers are actually, stranded in hospitals because of bills. Right, that's on matters education as well as on health. Moving on to other matters making headlines on the Daily Nation. Oil, gas prices rise as Iran war disrupts shipping. Now, smoke billows from an oil tanker under U.S. sanctions after it was hit off Oman's Musandam Peninsula in this screen grab taken from a video obtained by Reuters, that is in March 1st of 2026. And of course, they actually say what happens, in the States actually affects us in one way or the other. Now, this is actually the wars that are happening in Iran, actually, disrupting oil prices here in the country, the shipping of oil here in the East African countries and Africa at large. Right? It's quite unfortunate. Moving on to other stories making headlines. On page 2, there is a story on how Johanna Ngeno was denied elections victory, birthed Emurua Dikir. That's a story on page 2. Of course, we remember that Emurua Dikir, member of parliament, that is Johanna Ngeno, actually died from a plane crash that was on Saturday alongside 6 others, including the pilot, his photographer, and some of his workers. Of course, may their soul rest in eternal peace. And of course, the burial ceremony for this late MP is actually scheduled for Friday, and of course on Wednesday, and as well as on Thursday. There is a memorial service. Of course, today there is a memorial service in Karen, right, in remembrance of him and his dedication to his constituents and the country. All right. Moving on, detectives complete evidence collection in chopper or the copter crash, and detectives have finished collecting critical evidences from the site of Saturday's afternoon's helicopter crash, which claimed the lives of Emurua Dikir MP Johanna Ngeno and 5 others. Now on Monday, a multi-agency team comprising homicide detectives from the DCI, aviation experts spent the day combing through the wreckage, retrieving the flight instruments and technical components described as black box equivalent. Now, these items are expected to be to provide data on the aircraft's final movements before the crash. All right, and of course, we'll be waiting to hear what exactly happened, and what exactly affected or caused this particular crash. And of course, there is a story there of a lady who is a student, that is Jacobeth Jepto, who tried to save the lives of Emurua Dikir MP Johanna Ngeno and 5 others. Now, the first real-life emergency test for students nurse in chopper crash, and of course, exactly 10 days after completing her nursing studies at Kendall Adventist School of Medical Sciences, a young student nurse was thrust into a life or death emergency that will test everything that she had learned in college. Armed only with a pair of gloves and no medical kit, 22-year-old Jacobeth Jeto navigated the twisted wreckage of a helicopter that had crashed in Cape Forest in Mosop, that is in Nandi County, near the parents' home on Saturday's evening. Now, the helicopter crash claimed the life of Emurua Dikir Member of Parliament Johanna Ngeno and 5 others. Now, the fateful day, Miss Jepto and her mother, Miss Magdalene Gibbot, were relaxing at their home in Chepkiep village, Mosop, Nandi County, after a church. And about 4:20 p.m., the thunderous sound shattered the calm. Right, that's also exclusively on page 3 of the Daily Nation. Of course, I will remember that there is a story that this particular lady actually gave, where she said that 2 of now the slain, the victims of the Saturday's crash, 2 of them were actually had not died instantly. She actually said one died 30 minutes later, and the other one actually died 5 minutes later. And of course, she faulted the CHPs, the community health promoters, saying that they came, but even the gloves themselves, she is the one who gave the CHPs gloves, to attend to these particular victims. And of course, this shows that the country will need actually to do more on matters healthcare. All right, that's on page 3, exclusively on page 3 of the Daily Nation. Of course, Captain Wera, family friends mourn pilot who died in Nandi tragedy with 5 others. That's also as well on page 3 of the Daily Nation. Now let's take a look on what's making headlines on the Standard this particular morning. Now, top story on the Standard says, Mbadi, yes, I lied. Of course, John Mbadi is actually the Treasury Cabinet Secretary in Ruto's government. Of course, as you can see on the sidelines of your screen, there is a picture there of John Mbadi, and the title is actually there in bold. Mbadi, yes, I lied. Now, Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi swore the 5 trillion Kenya shillings National Infrastructure Fund exited and told Parliament it was registered. Now, he now admits the fund was never incorporated, not even its name was secured. Now, as the High Court probes the phantom fund meant to mobilize more than Kenya's entire budget, questions mount over who authorized it, who misled, and whether constitutional safeguards were deliberately sidestepped. That's actually on page 4 of the Standard newspaper, and actually John Badi says, and I quote, "We have formed a company ready to manage this fund. We want it managed professionally. We don't want a fund that will be managed at the National Treasury alone." And of course, that was actually on January 17th of 2026. That was in Kakamega County. Now, John Badi actually said again in the quote, "I have since established that the entity has not been incorporated, with the only formal step taken towards its incorporation being the reservation of the proposed name National Infrastructure Fund on December 19th of 2025, which reservation has since lapsed." End of quote. Right, that's the story as well on page 4 and 5 of the Standard newspaper. And of course, on the Standard newspaper on page 5, Kenyans in the Middle East express fears, hopes since the war between the United States and Iran broke out on Saturday. Kenyans living and working in the Middle East have been sending home messages of fear and hope on TikTok and Facebook. Many are seeking to reassure their families and that they are safe, while others are expressing fears and uncertainty spaces of many Gulf countries. And of course, we heard from the CS for Foreign Affairs, that is Musalia Mudavadi, actually said that, they will take care of Kenyans abroad, right? And of course, he actually warned, Kenyans who are going abroad in these, countries that are mad with violence and chaos, all right? Moving on to other stories making headlines in the corridors of justice. Surrogate parents seek protection in court. Of course, release of 3 children. That's on matters corridors of justice. That's on page 2 of the Daily Nation. The Standard newspaper, I beg your pardon. And Kofi Olomide, 69, words band member, long-time partner, Cindy. Of course, it's, interesting. Of course, worth celebrating when you see, people actually tying knots during this economy, right? That's on page 2. Kofi Olomide, who is actually 69, words band member and long-time partner, Cindy. That's a story on page 2 of the Standard newspaper. Now, House Team 1's HSDF allocation increased to 62 billion Kenya shillings. And the National Assembly is seeking to raise the National Government Constituency Fund, that is NGCDF allocation for the 2026-2027 financial year, from 58.8 billion to 61.8 billion. The chairman of the Finance Committee in the National Assembly, Kuria Kimani, said that the additional funding will be in compliance with the NGCDF Act of 2015, which requires a minimum allocation of 2.5% of the national government share of revenue. That's as well on page 2. And on page 3 is the Nandi job accident victim died in my arms. That's a story of Jokobeth, who is a student nurse who actually, tried to rescue the victims of the crash. All right, that's actually on page 3 of the Standard newspaper this particular morning. You're now up to speed with those making headlines from the dailies, what the dailies had for us this particular morning. And of course, it is exactly 1 minute past the top of the hour. Taking a short breather here on Morning Life, but when we come back, we're going to have a discussion right here on the state of the nation. Don't go too far.